Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I'm going to work on a classic. This one's from the 1950s. This is a Langley Spin Flo. It's a model 820 GB, made in the USA. Langley was a California aircraft company that started making fishing reels post-World War II. This one's an interesting one. There's a whole group of Langleys out there, and we thought you might enjoy seeing how this one is made, how it comes together, and of course how to service it if you have one of these. Now this one seems to be working okay. A couple of interesting approaches to this. It's got a lot of this, I'm going to call it nylon or neoprene in there. That's their drag system. There's nothing much going on there. We'll take the pieces and parts off, show you some of it. We have an axle here that's kind of welded in place, and you're going to look right away and try and figure out how to get that axle out. Well, we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to show you how to service the reel. Before I get started, I want to encourage you, if you like these kinds of videos, to please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use that notification button. That will make you aware of when I'm posting the particular videos, and well, you can make a choice as to whether that's a video you want to watch or not. Well, I start always by removing the exterior pieces. I'm going to do that with the handle here. There's a screw that holds the handle in, and there's a little knob or a little serrated washer underneath that screw. So make sure that you are aware of where they go. Take a picture. That way it'll tell you how the parts came off, so that you have a reference point on the way back in. That should just hold the handle simply, and well, the next part up should be involving that main gear from underneath. There's two side screws. They're relatively small size screws, so I recommend that you use a mini screwdriver. You want to match the blade of your screwdriver to the slot of the screw. If you use one that's too small, you have the risk of butterflying it, and of course if it's too wide, you're not going to be able to get the screw out. So go ahead and do your best to match the size and width of that blade to the screws that you are removing. There's only two screws that hold this side plate on. It's aluminum, and that makes sense. The Langley company, as I mentioned, they were an aluminum fabricator. I don't remember exactly if it was instrumentation or if it was like the wings and the like of the aircraft, but I do recall that it was aircraft manufacturer pre-war. Okay, I'm just going to use a little scrubby here just to get some of that little accumulated dirt off the side plate. You want to be careful when you're working on a vintage reel. You don't want to scar up the paint or anything beyond what may have already been scarred. All right, well, we had that question, how does that axle shaft come out? It comes out because there is a link pin in here. Sometimes I guess they're called cotter pins or the like. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that. With a little bit of strength, you can pull it. You want to notice that this is on a kind of an angle. It's not flat in, and that's important when you go to reinstall. With that pin out, we should be able to move this axle shaft up and out. Just grab it as best you can and pull it. Now if you need an additional assist, go ahead and grab the button and put that back on and use that as a lever. There it goes, to pull it out. Well, you can see that the reel has been sitting there for quite some time now, and well, it's just got a whole bunch of dirt and dried grease on there. So I'm going to take that button off. You'll notice that I use a parts tray for all of my pieces that are removed. That's a central repository so that I know where they are when I come back to get them later. All right, we're going to take a Steel Wolf 440 or 4-aught. And we're just going to make sure that we get all the old greases off of that shaft. All right, well, I still got a little bit of an issue here because the crosswind block just fell out. So it was good to take a picture before. Now, of course, I'm taking pictures with a video, and I do have a memory here that said that when I removed that clip, the clip was canted, so I know that the top side of the clip was headed outbound. So you want to make notes of that as you do your services. so that you don't lose those as reference points. So it goes this way. Just trying to find that clip. It was going that way, and it was sitting on the bottom, right? It couldn't have sat on the top. I didn't pull it out on that side. So take pictures along the way. That'll tell you where these pieces and parts belong, and they'll help with the reassembly later. Well, we have a neoprene or a nylon gear here. That's always fun. And well, how do you get to it? How do you get it out, right? There's no nut on the top rotor cup. So you start to look at what the possible tie downs are. And there's actually a big C-clip right here, or an E-clip. I always seem to manage to get those wrong. But go ahead and take that out. You can generally pry these out with a screwdriver or the like. You can see how I've got it started there. And we'll just go ahead and take a pliers just to show that clip. That's your clip. We'll put that into the parts tray as well so that we don't lose it. And now we should be able to remove the bowl of the rotor. And you want to do that because there's a couple of things going on under there. This is your little trip ramp for your bail, and there's dirt. So before I go much further, I'm going to go ahead and put a glove on because I do want to do some cleaning here. And the best way to protect your hands is a glove and the like. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to spray this down with some penetrating oil. I'll use a paper towel for the most part to wipe off the excess and the old greases and dirts. And you want to examine your pieces and parts. You want to make sure that this assembly is nice and cleaned, both sides. And these rotor cups, well, they're notorious for getting dirt on them because all of the water that's thrown off of your used line as you're reeling in is generally going to fall right there on a setup like this where the spool is inside the rotor cup. All right. That's pretty decent in terms of cleaning. There's a lot of tarnish in that on here that's just old and dried, and you're not going to get it all off, but make sure that you've got the visible dirts removed, and we're in good condition with that. So Scott found this one out in a flea market in the Los Angeles area, Southern California area. He's been finding some very interesting stuff. This one in Southern California would make sense because that's where the company was located. And eventually what happened with Langley is Langley got acquired by Zebco, and Zebco used the Langley spin fishing technologies as their way to enter the spinning wheel market. All right, going to kind of get that out of the way because we can now take off the pinion gear that's going to intersect with your main gear, and notice that it's canted. It's one side smaller or not as wide as the other side. The wide side goes up. Again, take a picture. That's always a good thing to do. Make sure this is nice and clean, and it is clean. All the teeth and that are uniform, not chipped or cracked. And now we should be able to push out the main gear. If you need a little assist, go ahead and use something like a screwdriver or that. And the whole idea here is let's get behind it. You can see that we have accumulated greases and the like on that shaft. So let's go ahead and make sure that you clean that up. Well, as I mentioned, this is not a metal gear. This is it's either nylon or one of those plastic types. And interestingly enough, World War II really did become an advent for the use of plastics versus metals. And you'll see a lot of interesting stuff happens in real technology post-war. One of the things that happens is that you see wood knobs, for example, being replaced by plastic knobs and the like. That's just because the technology's improved during that period of time. And who better to do the improvements than the folks that were kind of designing the war materials. In this case, Langley was doing the war materials for the aircraft industry. All right, we want to take fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision Reel grease here. You want to coat the back shaft that's going to ride in the bushings in the case You want to coat the teeth. And a little bit on the face here where that crossline gear is going to work. The inside of the case is clean, so all we have to do here is just go ahead and put that main gear back in. When you put that in, we took the handle off. A good way to keep this from rolling around as you go to reassemble is put the handle back on. Kind of works like that. Just going to try and find the screw and that little star. Now that star doesn't look like it was the original to this reel. I could be wrong. You would think that the precision aircraft manufacturer probably would have had a hole on that washer that was the same size as the hole of the screw, or the diameter of the screw. So I don't know if this one belongs there without that shim washer, or if somebody just decided that they were going to add that for additional strength or the like. All right, once you put that in, then you can come back and you can take the pinion gear, do the same thing, check the teeth, make sure they're clean. And if anything, the issue, if there was an issue with this reel, is that there was no greases on there, and whatever was in there was dried. All right, line that up. Remember the wide side goes down. Just kind of set it properly. Come on back to the other side. I'm going to just make sure that I get a little bit of grease on here. And then we can go back in from underneath. Wiggle it around a little bit, push through, and that's how you set it. And come on back and get your E-clip. Keep the pressure on it so that it doesn't slip as you go to mount that clip into the slots. And then push it in, and if you need to get that last little push there, go ahead and just use a pliers or something. Grab the back end of the E-clip. And we're in. Then give it a spin. Make sure that it's spinning nicely, which it is. All right, let's go ahead and load the axle shaft in. We're going to do the same thing with the axle shaft now. We're going to just give it a light coat of grease. You want to find the axle shaft's hole right there. That's going to be important as you load in that little clip. That's the tie-down clip. So I'm going to go ahead and put some grease into the cavity for the crossline block. Nice coating. You don't have to grease any other part of that. There's nothing else that is going to be touching. And then it's kind of a hit and miss on this, but you want to line that up. I've already kind of started that so that I can see the axle shaft coming down and where that pin is going to be. And then you're going to have to just look through, and eventually you will see the hole align with the hole in the axle shaft. You can take the pin and push it through at that point if you don't move it around too much. So I don't have the hand strength there. I'm just going to grab a pliers to help me. But I know I'm through the first part of that axle already. There we go. Almost there. There we go. So that's how we found it. That is your E-clip or your cotter pin or whatever which you want to call that. Boy, it's running so much smoother, Scott. You got a nice one here. This one is a very simply designed bail. There's nothing really fancy going on about it. What you want to do with the bail is just put a little bit of oil. If it was sticking, go ahead and use like penetrating oil. This is a dead end on this side. There's nothing moving in there. There's a little bail spring, and you can see how it's held there. and then as you come around, it's going to trip it. I'm trying to find that trip point right there. You can see how the back end of this is going to knock it off the spring. There you go, and then it returns. So that's how that's set, and all we need to do then is reattach the spool. So this spool, as I mentioned, has just got a neoprene kind of a drag washer to it. It's pressure. It's like the metal washers that we used in the back in the day, if you will. And I'm gonna finish this video, but I am going to take this line off for Scott. There's no reason that this cord remain on the line or on the reel. That cord was used as backdrop or filler so that you did not use as much monofilament as the reel could support. The reason for that is when monofilament first came out, it was relatively expensive. Of course, now you wouldn't use a backing like this. You would probably set the whole reel up with the monofilament. It's a trick that's still used with braid. A lot of folks know they only need about 100 yards of braid. They have a 200-yard pack. Instead of putting 200 yards on the reel, they'll back it with monofilament, not the string, but they'll back it with the monofilament, and then add the braid as the last 100 yards. Cotton string like this was a way to do that, to save a couple of bucks, but the problem is that cotton line holds water. And so what would happen with that is the water would just sit there, and if you're in a salt water environment, it would start to corrode the inner part of the spool. And those of you that work on older reels know you've seen plenty of spools that have lost their paint or lost their shine or have chips and cracks in it or corrosion because that older line that was holding the water had become injurious to the reel. All right. We're just going to put the two side plate screws on to button this up. We'll give it a final test there. You've seen it's running. And while I'm doing this, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel for everything it is that they do to keep us safe during the pandemic here. I mean, what are we in year 3.5 now? And we just noticed an uptick. This is late December now. We've just noticed an uptick in local cases. So I think as folks are going back indoors after the summer outdoors, well, the virus is coming with them, and well, we're right back, almost not quite where we started. Nice, smooth reel. You'll notice when we did this reel, there are no anti-reverse mechanisms in the reel, so that means you're going to be spinning forward, and you can fight a fish backwards. That's probably why your drag is so limited there. If you get into a tough battle with a fish, you just let the line in by backing the reel off, backpedaling, and then as you want to continue to fight, you fight in. So that's it. This is your Langley Spin Flo model 820 GB. Nice reel from the 1950s. A great example of American engineering post-war that started to introduce the spinning reels to this country. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. To everybody who's watching, I appreciate everything you've done to help make this channel successful. To all, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.